The receipt sat on the old table like a tiny broken promise. $0. Not even loose change. Just that empty line where a tip should have been. For Natalie Cross, standing in the corner of the lonesome highway diner, with the smell of fried onions and truck fuel in the air, that empty space felt like another door slamming shut. She folded the receipt slowly and put it in her apron pocket next to the grocery list she'd been thinking about all afternoon. Because this wasn't just about the tip. It was another reminder that staying alive took more than just hard work and hope. Natalie was 29 years old, a single mom trying to hold her life together. Her life felt like it was always about to fall apart. She worked the dinner shift at the Lonesome Highway Diner, a truck stop restaurant outside of Millbrook, a town so tiny it wasn't even on most maps. Her day started at 3 p.m. after she walked her 6-year-old son, Tyler, to her sister's apartment 3 blocks away. Tyler was smart and curious, always asking questions about stars and dinosaurs and why the sky changed colors. Natalie answered what she could while thinking about how many shifts she needed to work to buy his new shoes, pay the late electric bill, and fix the growing pile of broken things that would have to wait. She carried her tiredness quietly. The way you carry something heavy for so long that you forget what it feels like to put it down. Her uniform, a red and white checkered shirt and black jeans, had been washed so many times the fabric felt as thin as paper. But she showed up to every shift on time with a real smile, even when everything else felt like it was falling apart. The diner itself had personality, the kind that comes from being open for many, many years. The seats were patched with duct tape, the jukebox in the corner still played old scratchy records, and the walls were covered with faded photos of truck drivers and travelers who'd stopped by over the years. Natalie knew every crack in the floor, every sticky spot on the counter, and every trick to make the old coffee maker work just right. This place had become like a second home to her, though she dreamed of something better for Tyler, something better than watching his mom's dreams fade away into double shifts and late nights. That evening had been really hard. The Saturday crowd came in waves, truck drivers passing through, families getting away from their own kitchens, and regular customers who knew Natalie's name and left decent tips. She'd been standing for 6 hours straight when they showed up. 3 motorcycles roared into the parking lot. Just after 8 p.m., their loud engines cut through the noise of people talking and silverware clinking. Everyone noticed. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A few customers looked toward the door with faces showing curiosity and worry. The sound was super loud, then suddenly quiet as the engines turned off one by one. When the door opened, 3 men walked in wearing leather vests covered with patches and symbols Natalie couldn't quite see from across the room. Hell's Angels. Or at least that's what people whispered. The man leading them was hard to miss. Tall, with broad shoulders, silver streaks in his dark beard, and eyes that seemed to notice everything without judging. His vest had more patches than the others. Fancy designs that told stories of years and miles and experiences Natalie would never know. Tattoos went up his neck and disappeared under his collar. His hands were scarred, the kind of scars you get from real work in real life. His name, she learned later from the credit card receipt, was Jackson Reaper Stone, a name that meant something in groups she'd never been part of. They took the corner booth, the biggest one, and settled in with the calm confidence of men who'd been in 1,000 diners just like this. Natalie walked up to their table with the same politeness she showed everyone. Her notepad was ready, and water glasses were already filled. Her hands shook a little, not exactly from fear, but from the stress of the day and the scary presence of men whose looks seemed meant to keep people away. "Good evening, gentlemen. What can I get you?" Reaper looked up at her, and something in his eyes made her stop. It wasn't mean. It wasn't cold. It was searching, like someone looking to understand something important. He looked at her name tag, then her face, then the small cross necklace she wore. It was a gift from her grandmother that she never took off. "Coffee," he said, his voice rough but not mean. "Black, and whatever your breakfast special is, even though it's dinner time." The other 2 men ordered burgers and fries. They talked less and watched more. One had kind eyes even though he looked tough. The other seemed always smiling at something only he understood. Natalie wrote quickly, repeated the order back, and went to the kitchen. Behind her, she heard the manager, Carl, muttering something about those types and keeping an eye on things. Natalie didn't say anything. She'd learned years ago that judging people by how they looked was something she couldn't afford to do. She'd been judged enough herself. The single mother who couldn't make things work, the woman who trusted the wrong man and was now paying for it alone. She brought their food quickly, refilled their coffee without being asked, and checked back once to make sure everything was good. Reaper nodded each time, barely talking, but his eyes followed her movements around the diner. Not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but with attention that felt strangely respectful. Like he was noticing something only he understood. She watched him from the corner of her eye as she helped other tables. He ate slowly and carefully, sometimes talking quietly to his friends. Once she saw him look toward the window, toward the parking lot where a beat-up Honda Civic sat under the flickering streetlight. Her car, the one with the window taped up, and the engine that coughed every morning like it was trying to remember how to start. The one she prayed would last through one more winter. Another time she caught him watching her help an elderly couple in the next booth. The woman had dropped her napkin, and Natalie had picked it up before the woman could even reach down. She handed it back with a real smile and a gentle joke about how the napkins were trying to run away tonight. The old woman laughed, and Natalie moved on to the next table without thinking twice. But Reaper had seen it. She could feel his attention like something real. When they finished eating, Reaper stacked the plates neatly. A small action that surprised her. Most customers left a mess behind. He stood up, nodded to his friends, and they walked out without a fuss. The door closed behind them, and the diner slowly went back to normal. Someone turned up the jukebox. A truck driver at the counter laughed at something his friend said. Life went on. Natalie walked up to the table with a bin to clear dishes, already preparing herself for the disappointment she'd felt 100 times before. People who looked like they had money often didn't tip. People who looked like they didn't sometimes surprised you. She'd stopped trying to guess. She'd learned to accept whatever came and adjust her money planning, stretching dollars thin until they finally broke. The receipt was there, signed in sharp handwriting. She looked at the tip line. 0. Her jaw tightened, not with anger, but with acceptance. She thought about Tyler's upcoming field trip. The permission slip needed a $15 fee she'd been trying to figure out how to pay. She thought about the medicine he needed for his asthma, the inhaler that cost more than a week of groceries. She thought about the parent-teacher meeting next week where she'd have to explain again why she couldn't help with the holiday party because she'd be working. She reached for the plates, stacking them with practiced skill when her finger touched something. Paper folded and tucked under the biggest plate, hidden from view. Her heart skipped a beat, a strange mix of hope and fear that felt almost painful. Natalie looked around the diner. Carl was in the back. The few customers left were lost in their own worlds. She carefully pulled the paper out, opening it with hands that started to shake. It wasn't money. Not at first look. It was a note written in the same handwriting as the signature on the receipt. The words were simple, straight to the point, without fancy feelings. I've been watching you tonight, not because I'm weird, but because I see something. You treat everyone the same. You smile the same. You work the same. You don't see patches or leather jackets. You see people? That's rare. That matters. Natalie's breath stopped in her throat. She kept reading. I saw you look at that car in the parking lot. I saw you count your tips 3 times during your break. I saw you write something on your notepad that wasn't in order, probably a bill or a list of things you can't buy yet. I know that look. I had it for years. Her eyes started to get blurry with tears. The diner sounds became a faraway hum. This isn't a tip because tips are for service. This is different. This is for noticing something in you that most people never see in themselves. Dignity. You work with dignity. You're a parent with dignity. You survive with dignity, and that's worth more than money. But money helps. Under the note was a check from a bank. Not cash that could be put in a pocket and forgotten, but an official check made out to her name. Natalie's eyes swam with tears as she read the amount. $5,000. She sat down hard in the booth, the dish bin forgotten beside her. $5,000. For months of rent? Tyler's field trip, and new shoes and asthma medicine. The car repair she'd been putting off. Groceries without worry. A safety net, even if small, between her and the edge she'd been walking for years. But there was more. Attached to the check was a business card. Simple. Black with white letters. Jackson Reaperstone, founder, Road to Redemption Foundation. We invest in people who invest in themselves. And a handwritten line at the bottom. Call if you want more than a check. No strings attached. Just opportunity. Stop for a moment. Think about Natalie. Think about every time you felt invisible, looked over, or judged by what you wear or where you work. Have you ever been that person counting tips, figuring out which bill to pay first? Or have you walked past someone like Natalie without really seeing them? If this story is touching something deep inside you, if you've ever needed someone to see your worth when the world only saw your struggle, don't just watch. Hit that like button. Not for me, but to tell the algorithm that stories about real people, real struggles, and unexpected grace matter more than silly viral videos. And write a comment below with one word. The first emotion you felt when you heard that $5,000 amount, was it relief? Hope? Disbelief? Your one word might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Natalie sat in that booth for 5 full minutes. The note pressed against her chest, tears streaming down her face in the dim corner light. Carl called her name twice before she heard him. She wiped her eyes, pulled herself together, and finished her shift in a daze, moving through the motions like a robot. Every time she touched the check in her pocket, she wondered if it was real. If this was some big joke the universe was playing on her tired heart. That night, after she picked up Tyler and tucked him into bed, Natalie sat at her tiny kitchen table and read the note again and again. She studied the business card, running her finger over the raised letters. She looked up Jackson Stone online. Her old laptop took forever to load each page. She found articles about a former Hell's Angel who'd turned his life around. He now ran a foundation helping single parents and people ignored by normal systems. A man who'd been homeless once, who'd spent time in prison for mistakes he made as a young man, who'd lost everything and built it back through hard work and unlikely kindness from strangers who looked past his patches. There were photos of him at community centers, at job fairs, at high schools, talking to troubled teens. In every picture, he wore the same vest, the same patches, never hiding who he was or where he came from. The articles called him controversial. Some people praised his work. Others questioned whether a man with his past should be given platforms and money. But the people he'd helped, their stories scattered through the articles, all said the same thing. He saw them when no one else did. She didn't sleep that night. She thought about dignity, about being seen, about the fact that someone wearing a leather vest covered in symbols she'd been taught to fear had looked at her and seen something worth investing in. She thought about all the guesses she'd made about people, about the boxes she'd put them in based on nothing more than looks. She felt ashamed and grateful and scared all at once. The next morning, Natalie called the number on the card. A woman answered, warm and professional. When Natalie nervously told her story, the woman simply said, "Reaper told us you'd call. He's usually right about people. When can you come in?" The foundation's office was in a rebuilt warehouse an hour away. Natalie drove there on her day off. Tyler was strapped in the back seat, asking endless questions about where they were going and why. The building looked plain from the outside, but inside it was warm, filled with light and the sound of people working together. There were desks and computers, a kitchen area where someone was making coffee, and walls covered with photos of success stories. Weeks became months. Natalie didn't quit her job right away. She learned that Road to Redemption Foundation worked differently than normal charities. They didn't just hand out money. They gave mentorship, training, resources, and connections. They connected people to opportunities that had always been there but had been invisible from where Natalie stood. They taught her about budgeting, about credit, about the systems that kept people trapped in poverty cycles and how to get through them. Reaper met with her twice. Once at a coffee shop where he sat across from her in jeans and a plain t-shirt, looking more like a teacher than a biker explaining his beliefs. Everyone deserves a second chance. sometimes a third or fourth. I got mine from people who didn't look like they should care. An old lady who gave me a place to sleep when I was on the streets. A judge who gave me work release instead of more jail time. A stranger who hired me when no one else would. Now, I pass it on. He told her his story, not to impress her, but to show her that change was possible. He'd grown up poor, fallen into gang life, and made mistakes that cost him years of his life. But somewhere along the way, someone had invested in him. Not with money, but with belief. And that belief changed everything. The second time was at the Lonesome Highway Diner. He sat in the same booth, ordered the same meal, left the same $0 tip, and the same hidden note. This one simply said, "You're doing great. Keep going. Tyler's lucky to have you." Seeing her son's name made her cry right there in the booth because it meant Reaper remembered. It meant this wasn't just charity. It was care. Natalie used the foundation's resources to take online courses in business management. She discovered she had a talent for planning and organizing that she'd been using all along, just without anyone noticing. The foundation connected her with a small business owner looking for an operations manager. The pay was better. The hours were stable. For the first time in years, Natalie could breathe easy. But she didn't forget the Lonesome Highway. On weekends, she still picked up occasional shifts, not because she needed the money, but because she remembered what it felt like to work there and be invisible. And now, she could see others the way Reaper had seen her. She started small, leaving her own hidden notes for servers who looked exhausted. $20 bills tucked under plates for single parents she recognized by their tired eyes and quick number calculations. She couldn't leave thousands, but she could leave hope. And sometimes hope was worth more than any dollar amount. 2 years later, Natalie stood in a small community center in Millbrook, helping to open a branch of Road to Redemption Foundation. Tyler, now 8 years old, sat in the front row, proudly wearing a button that said, "My mom helps people." The center would give resources, mentorship, and small grants to local families struggling the way Natalie once had. Reaper came to the opening. He still wore his vest, still rode his motorcycle, still looked like someone people would cross the street to avoid. He stood in the back, arms crossed, watching Natalie speak about second chances and dignity and the importance of looking past surfaces. Afterward, he walked up to her and held out his hand. "You did good, Natalie." She shook it, then pulled him into a hug that surprised them both. "You saw me when I was invisible." He stepped back, a rare smile crossing his weathered face. "You were never invisible. You were just surrounded by people who weren't paying attention." Before he left, he sat once more at a table in the community center's small cafe area. Natalie brought him coffee black, without asking. When he stood to leave, she checked the table and found what she expected. A receipt with a $0 tip and a folded note. "Some angels wear wings. Some wear leather. Keep looking past the surface. You'll find more of us than you think." Natalie kept that note in a frame on her desk. Not as a reminder of the money which had been spent long ago on practical things that changed her life in practical ways, but as a reminder of something more valuable. The moment someone looked past her exhaustion and her situation and saw the person underneath, the person who'd been there all along, working with dignity, loving with dedication, surviving with grace. Years passed. Natalie's story inspired others. The foundation grew. Tyler grew up asking questions about how to help people the way his mom did. Natalie still worked hard. She still worried sometimes. She still struggled with bills and life's unexpected problems. But she no longer walked along the cliff edge. She'd built something stronger beneath her feet. And every year, on the anniversary of that night at the Lonesome Highway Diner, Natalie returned. She sat in the corner booth, ordered whatever the special was, and left a note under her plate for whatever server worked that shift. Sometimes it was just encouragement. Sometimes it was a check. It always ended the same way. "This is not a tip. This is for your dignity. Pass it on when you can." Because she'd learned that the world doesn't change through big actions alone. It changes in the quiet moments under plates and inside folded notes. It changes when someone wearing an unexpected uniform sees you, really sees you, and decides that your dignity is worth investing in. It changes when angels arrive on motorcycles instead of clouds. It's wearing leather instead of robes, offering not salvation but something more practical. A second chance. And it changes when you accept that chance, use it well, and then spend the rest of your life looking for others standing where you once stood, invisible and exhausted and worthy of being seen. If you're still here, if you've made it through Natalie's entire journey, you're different from most people. You didn't scroll away when things got real. You stayed. Now I need you to do something that might feel uncomfortable. I need you to think about someone in your life right now. Someone who's struggling in silence? Maybe it's the person who makes your coffee every morning. Maybe it's a coworker who always looks tired. Maybe it's a family member who says, "I'm fine," but their eyes tell a different story. Here's the truth. You might not have $5,000 to give, but you have something more powerful. You have the ability to see people, to acknowledge their dignity, to remind them they're not invisible. If this story changed something in you, if it made you want to look past surfaces and see the Natalies and Reapers in your own world, then share this video. Not because I asked, but because someone you know needs to hear this today. Someone is counting tips right now. Someone is deciding which bill to skip this month. Someone is one act of kindness away from believing in people again. Write a comment below with 2 things. First, where you're watching from. Second, one small act of kindness you're going to do this week for someone who feels invisible. Don't just watch this story. Let it change you. Let it make you one of those unexpected angels who sees dignity in places others overlook. And if you've ever been Natalie, if someone saw you when you felt invisible, share that story in the comments. Your story might be the hope someone else needs to keep going. Hit subscribe if you believe that the most powerful stories aren't about superheroes and capes. They're about real people in diners, on motorcycles, behind counters. Choosing kindness when being mean would be easier. Because sometimes the angel you need doesn't look like what you expected. And sometimes $0 on a receipt means everything. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, keep looking past the surface. You'll be amazed at what you find.